Hi, I'm Janina Lundy, and you're listening to In Her Words.
Everyone has a story. Welcome to In Her Words, a podcast from women in entertainment where female creatives and allies share their stories in their own words.
This is a dedicated space centered on how to harness creativity for inspiring and impactful projects in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment.
I'm Renee Rossi,
I'm Gretchen McCourt.
and this is In Her Words.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to In Her Words. Janina Lundy is the Executive Vice President of Marketing and Brand Partnerships for Hartbeat. She has her hands in everything that is going on at Hartbeat, and as you guys know, that's a lot. From Kevin's live shows, to their movies, to their television, to the commercials. There's so much going on there, and Janina is the perfect blend of a whip-smart businesswoman and a creative, fun brain. We loved talking to her, we learned so much, and we think you guys are going to enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to dive in on Hartbeat.
You guys have been such great partners to us. We've had different amazing women executives from Hartbeat on over the years from our podcast. And so you guys have been just fantastic and such like Renee said, we can't wait to dive in because you guys are such an inspiration to young women coming up, looking to have career changes, executive positions. You guys are an inspiration. So this is going to be a fun conversation.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I saw that Candace Wilson
Yeah.
Cherry was on previously. So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
And then we've had different, I have to get a whole list of people, but at our summit, we've probably had 3 or 4 different women from Hartbeat at our summit speaking on different topics, sitting on different
Oh
panels.
yeah, Candace Williamson just did the summit
Yes.
the other week. Yeah,
Yep.
it was in Cannes while that one was going
Yep.
on. But yeah, well, I'm excited that we have enough women
Good.
to be able to speak with you guys. That's awesome.
No, it is. So tell us, why don't we kind of start at the beginning? What did how you got where you are and how you got into, entertainment marketing. And we love for our audience to kind of see that no path is straight and narrow. And we think it's super helpful for them to hear kind of the twists and turns of everyone's career and how you got where you are.
Yeah, sure. I don't know anybody whose story is completely linear. Mine, I always thought I wanted to be, well, first I wanted to be an actress, and my dad told me I needed to have a more realistic career choice. So I thought I was going to be a film director, and for some reason he thought that was a good backup career. Um, but so I always thought I wanted to go to film school, and through a series of events involving me breaking my ankle and a bunch of craziness on the day before I was supposed to leave for that school, I ended up taking a bunch of marketing classes and getting really interested in PR and advertising and working in this field. And it's kind of all come full circle because now I get to do marketing for film and TV. So it is all worked out. Um, I started out working in PR for welfare reform. And that was like when I first started out. And I liked the PR part, but less of sort of the government piece of things, and quickly moved more into entertainment. I worked in events for an event agency for a long time. And ultimately I was in Chicago at that time, and I moved to New York and started working for an ad agency, learning a little bit more of sort of, strategy and traditional advertising and marketing. And then there moved into entertainment. So I had a client in HBO and started doing some work on Game of Thrones, and sort of fell in love with, TV and film marketing from that point.
So that's fairly recent, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that was, I guess it was in the second or third season
Yeah.
of Game of Thrones, but let's see, I still lived in New York at that time. So that was probably like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, maybe 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. Ah! Oh my goodness. Um, I was 12. And, yeah, so I was doing marketing for Game of Thrones. I worked on this super amazing project there, creating a mixtape with a bunch of different artists who were fans of the show. And it was all about sort of what happens in Game of Thrones to get, like, multicultural and young audiences interested in the show. And so really kind of fell in love, with TV and film marketing from there, and did some other work within that space. Then left the ad agency, had my own company for a little while, and was really working more as a producer. So working with one of the directors that I had worked with when I was on the ad agency side, developing branded content primarily. We did a short film for ESPN and Gatorade, about the tennis player Francis Tiafoe, and had been working on, some other content. And I got a call from the then CMO of BET saying, "Hey, would you be interested in coming over and helping us out for a few months? We're doing some restructuring and could just use some support on the marketing side." And I was like, "Sure, I'll do that," while I'm waiting for a show that we were going to produce for CNN to go into production. And went over to BET, and I loved it. I ended up working with one of the best bosses I've ever had, another amazing woman, Janine Liebert. And I worked there on sort of all of the marketing on the BET side. And in the meantime, Trump was voted president the first time, and CNN didn't need as much of their original programming, after that, with all of the news ratings. And so the show that I had been working on and thought was going to happen, sort of died. And Janine asked me if I was interested in staying on at BET full time. And I never thought that I was going to want to go back and work for anybody again. And I did. And it was great. And then I ended up working on the launch of BET Plus and leading marketing and operations for BET Plus for a couple of years. And then got a call from Amazon. COVID happened. I moved to LA, and ended up working at Amazon Studios in audience development. And now, most recently, Hartbeat. So
My
I've been at
God.
Hartbeat for a year and a half, almost 2 years now.
I feel like the trend or the little message that we could share with people is say yes as these opportunities come up. It sounds like you thought you had a plan, and some other ideas came in because they saw your work, or for whatever reason knew your name, and you said yes to these different opportunities that came up.
Yeah, I think say yes, and then, sort of continue to nurture the relationships throughout time, because I think, the BET piece, Janine and I didn't really know each other well. She actually had asked a friend of hers who was at HBO, leading marketing, who was one of the best clients I have ever had. Also, Lucinda Martinez, who was at HBO, and she had asked Lucinda about who she could have come over and help out at BT, and Lucinda gave her my name, and that's how Janine and I got connected. And now, Janine not only was a great boss, but like has become a longtime friend at this point in life. And even I think with Heartbeat, I had talked to Heartbeat a few times. So Heartbeat had reached out to me when I was at BET, again when I first started at Amazon, and then again sort of later in my Amazon tenure. And I that relationship was strong, and eventually this was the right time for me to make the change.
What was that? So, kind of talking about as is it your gut telling you? Is it time? What can you share about what made it the right time? If Heartbeat had come before and not quite, what kind of happens that the timing does feel right?
Yeah, I think a few different things were going on. I think there were certain things that I really wanted to accomplish at Amazon. I was building a team that was focused on developing what they called emerging audiences, so growth audiences globally. And I felt like I had done some of that work and had really built a team that would be able to, stand up the work with me not being there anymore. And I thought, we had hit a lot of those milestones. I also felt like at the time, there were a lot of talent-led companies that were establishing themselves. And I thought, that's kind of the future. And I was seeing, a lot of growth in that area. And I figured if I was going to go to a talent-led production company or studio, that Kevin Hart would be the way to go. I had always heard really great things about him within the industry. And, I think I really liked how diversified the business was. So it felt like a good move. And the team that I work with is so amazing. And so that was a big draw for me.
In terms of marketing and comms right now, so much has changed in terms of capturing audience. And obviously, comedy has been, a lot of comedians have kind of come out and talked a lot about the struggles of comedy these days. And you're in charge of marketing a lot of
Yeah.
it. How has that changed for you and how have audiences changed for you? As we're looking at our audience and there are folks that want to create films, and events and things along those lines, what would you tell them to take away from it in terms of, what they should be thinking about as they're starting to do marketing and comms around their specific projects?
I think things have definitely changed quite a bit. I think a lot of it is we are moving so quickly. So that's a big piece of it is being able to react to kind of what's happening in culture very quickly. I think sometimes, in the past, in the olden days, no, just kidding. We would be thinking more about making sure that everything is the highest possible quality. And now there's sort of a balance that you need to have between the quality and staying true to the brand, but also making sure that you can operate sort of at the speed of culture. So I think that's one piece of things. I think it's also about making sure that you are serving your audience in all of the different places that they're consuming content. So, making sure like we always talk about making sure that we have something for whatever, whenever, and wherever people are looking to consume content. So that's a big piece of it. If you're doing longer form content, great, but then also making sure that there's the ability to cut that down and serve your audience when they just want sort of a bite-sized quick laugh. That's something that's core to a lot of what we do.
And in terms of what you're seeing from a branded content standpoint, obviously there's a lot of talk around the ad ecosystem, how are brands really starting to get into some of the streaming content, things along those lines. What are you guys seeing as you're starting to whereas you guys work with huge brands,
Yeah.
and where they're looking at putting branded content?
Yeah, that's a huge part of what I'm focused on. So I came into Hartbeat focused on the marketing side, but obviously I started out on ad agencies, and have a lot of understanding of the brand side. And so like that's been a really big piece of my role now is taking on the brand partnerships and how we look at that moving forward. There's a lot of different ways that we're working with brands. So there's sort of like the old traditional way of sort of just, integration into existing content and what we used to call product placement. I don't even know if anybody says product placement anymore.
I
But,
don't think they
Oldie.
do, but I feel like that's to the point. Everybody
I think
bring it.
this entire podcast is gonna be about the fact that I, am aging myself in everything that I say. But,
You're with like-minded people who understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
So we're
um
all eating.
Yeah. So I think there's sort of like the brand integration piece, which we do, and is definitely a piece of things. But a lot of what I'm really excited about right now is sort of brand funded content that we're doing. um, we kind of talk about it as brands can be movie stars too. So we bring brands in to be a co-star with us in the content. So sometimes that means even personifying a brand and making the brand into an actual character in the story. Sometimes it's a natural integration into the story, and sometimes you don't see the brand at all. We just did a film called Group Therapy, which we did for AXA Insurance, and it featured Neil Patrick Harris as sort of like the therapist doing group therapy with a number of different comedians, so Tig Notaro, London Hughes, um, Nicole Byer, a number of different comedians talking about mental health. And AXA fully funded that documentary, but you never see AXA in the film. It was important to them to get out the message that talk therapy is important, that sharing is therapeutic. And so that film was put out in the world. It's available on Prime Video. And we actually won 3 Cannes Gold Lions or 2 Cannes Gold Lions and 1 bronze this year for that film, which is really exciting, just to see where brands are headed, and it's a completely different model than you've seen in the past. So I think that kind of content we're gonna see more and more of. And then the other way that we're doing it is that we're integrating brands into, feature films that we're doing, where they might have a smaller part or just a smaller brand integration. But alongside that, we're developing shoulder content that might be, a little bit more heavily branded, but also has storytelling elements to it. So one that we're doing has like a short film that's separate that the brand can own, and they can put that out in their paid or in their owned and operated channels, so that they have something that's a little bit more, organic within the integration into the larger film. But then they also have some other content that, may help to promote the big film and also promotes their brand in a bigger way.
No, that's super interesting. We've been involved with brand storytelling at Sundance for years, and it's just, I mean, it's the future. It really is to see these brands not only like you not be just be product placement, but to really just be funding and being involved in these films. I'm curious with the brands coming in. You've talked a lot about respecting and knowing your audience and making sure that you're speaking to the people who are making the decisions and spending the money. And it's more than just, 50-year-old white men who have money and make decisions and entertainment. How has that changed, or has it changed with brand partnerships and as marketing has evolved? Is there an understanding now that, that women are making decisions, that people of color are making decisions, that have money to spend? Is that, is that broader audience becoming is it easier to get the companies and the brands to allow you to speak to everyone?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think the brands that we're working with understand that and get it. I think ultimately, I was at an event where I can't remember who said it, but somebody was asking about like how do you convince brands that um, it's important to reach diverse audiences? And they were like, "Just take a picture of the people buying your product," right? So, I mean, it's just pretty obvious, I think, at this point. We really think about, the work that we do from the content side, from the work that we do with brands. We think about the audience first and what the audience is looking for. Ultimately, you wanna make sure that you're servicing them first and foremost. And then the other place that we come from it is, thinking about the creators and thinking about the talent. And I think we're taking a lot of our cues from creators and really understanding the work that they're doing and how well they understand their audience and putting a lot of the creative power into their hands. They're also directly interacting with audiences every day, which is why they are so successful. They're getting direct feedback, if they're in their comments and understanding what their audience is gravitating towards, what they like, what they don't like. And I think, they really have a lot of that information about the audience.
You had mentioned before that, one of your clients, you have a film obviously out on Amazon. How are the streamers looking at branded content? How is that going in terms of just because I think each one of them, Amazon kind of has their model, Netflix to be determined. But like as a shop that is building branded content, how are you approaching them or how are they approaching you on it?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's kind of different on each platform. So I think everyone's trying to figure out the best way to manage this moving forward. I'm having a lot of conversations directly with a lot of those platforms. I can tell you very frankly, at the moment, there are more brands wanting to do content than there are places to put it. So I think
Wow.
one of the harder parts of branded content is the distribution, so understanding where that can live. So a lot of what I'm doing is having those conversations and doing the sort of the legwork, on the front end to understand how we can get content onto the platform, what kind of content they're looking for. So that's a big piece of it. Um, we're doing some work with YouTube also. I think, some brands want the content directly on YouTube, and some still have sort of a stigma on this idea of like where they want it to be premium. But I'm seeing a lot of content perform really well. Obviously, so many people are watching YouTube on TV. So I think it's sort of just educating brands sometimes on the fact that people are consuming YouTube in a different way. And I think a lot of us know that, but there's still a lot of people who see YouTube as something that people are consuming only on the phone, only
That's
within
interesting.
mobile. So I think, we have a show that we're doing with YouTube called Caddy and the Kid, and they're long form episodes. The episodes are, 40 minutes to an hour long. Um, and we're doing those with brands, and brands are sponsoring not necessarily the whole season, but episode by episode. And we're doing that in partnership with YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is interesting. You've mentioned we're talking about all the platforms and Heartbeat, and we know. I mean, not jokingly, Kevin is the hardest working man in show. I mean, he's everywhere. I'm curious to how your day to day, your team, your department, how challenging is it because he. Heartbeat is theatrical. It is streaming. It is, like you said, YouTube. It is, it's short film. It's docs. It's everything. It's series is there live events. I mean, there's just so much that's happening there. What challenges does that throw for you and for your department to be it's not just I have a movie star and he's going to be in movies and that's all it is versus now, everywhere and everything beyond and not I know it's not just Kevin. There's, everything that you guys are producing and everything that you're partnering with. How challenging is it as there's more and more and more platforms and more opportunities out there for places for your production and your content to be?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. We have a lot going on. I don't know my name or where I am ever. No. No, I mean, we have a great team, and I think one of the things that is helpful in the team, both that was already there and the team that I've brought in since I've joined, is I'm looking for people who are sort of very entrepreneurial, and can wear a lot of different hats. I think the people that thrive within this company and within companies like ours are people who, you know, get sort of energy and excitement out of doing a lot of different things and touching a lot of different things. I like that energizes me and excites me. I love that we're working on so many different things. There's nothing monotonous about this job. But yeah, we're doing so many, it's kind of like the company is built on the DNA of Kevin and sort of the idea that he's doing so many different things, that there's humor, that there's heart, that there's, like heat and energy and sort of hustle in everything that we're doing. And those are the types of people that sort of thrive. Um, I have had, just like we talked about with the career that I've had, sometimes I forget, but like as I tell this story of sort of how I got here, I've worked in a lot of different areas. And so, I started out in PR. I worked on the experiential side for a long time. I worked on ad agencies. I worked in film and TV. So it all kind of comes together and makes sense somehow in this crazy heartbeat soup that I'm in.
I think when we first met Candace and talking about we were talking with also with kind of the makeup of Heartbeat and how there's so many women involved in executive positions and we I think at the same time we were talking about to Seth MacFarlane's team which is very similar and John Legend's team which is very similar, these amazing women. I mean, there's a refreshingness to that of truly choosing the best people and then allowing people like you to choose the best people. Is that a different environment than you've worked in before? Or sounds like you've had some great environments and some great, mentors that have come out, but is there a, something it sounds like almost refreshing that they're building a team with the best people, whoever they may be, and then allowing you executives to do the same?
Yeah. I think I've been pretty lucky in that. I think throughout my career, been able to bring on teams and even some of the people that I've worked with, there was, someone that I worked with at Amazon who I also worked with at BET, who I brought over to Hartbeat. I've brought over somebody else that I worked with at Amazon. So I have had the luxury of that in my career. But I think in this place in particular, yeah, I think a lot of that, comes from the top. And I think Kevin has a lot of people around him that have worked with him for a long time, but there's also, new energy coming in as the business grows. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring in the right team that, has the alignment with sort of our mission. We have this whole idea of keep the world laughing together, and that's a lot of fun. And so we want people. My team actually, we're hiring for a couple of roles right now, and my head of social was saying that he now has me in the back of his head, and he was like, as I'm interviewing someone and they're saying like all the right things and they seem like somebody who can definitely do the job, he's like, I hear you saying I want people who really want to be here. And, like, that's what's really important to me is, like, people who are bought in because it does require a lot of hard work, and we are doing so much. You have to really want to do this. And so, yeah, that's what I think about a lot as I'm hiring too.
What are you finding to be challenging in this area in terms of hiring right now? I feel like you're kind of in it's a weird time for hiring in general, but as you're starting to look at it's like you're in a sought after company, you're a sought after market. What does that look like? Like what challenges are you facing in terms of whether it's hiring this generation that's graduating or you're trying to kind of put that team together? What are you looking for? Because again, it's here's the resume, you really want to be here, but what challenges are you seeing or that you're feeling right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, part of it is there's really wanting to be there, because you're interested in the work that we're doing versus really wanting to be there because it seems very glamorous. And, when it really comes down to it, yes, there are parts of my job that I guess are more glamorous than others.
Yeah.
But ultimately we're doing, marketing and production in the same way as you would be in any other company. So there's still sort of like the work element. So I think it's sifting through some of that. I think there has been, I love the younger generation, and my team is actually very young for the most part. But I think there is sort of this idea that you are going to be promoted like within, months of starting, and sort of educating, I think, a little bit on the process for all of those things is something that has been challenging, not necessarily just at Heartbeat, but I think at
I think
Amazon, all of
it's
the
generally I
yeah.
think it's generally I think
Yeah.
there's a understanding what a growth path or staying in a role for more than a beat.
Yeah, and staying with a role and staying at a company.
Yeah.
So I think that part is challenging. And then I think in particular in sort of smaller companies or sort of like this startup feel, um, there's just sort of the desire to wear different hats and not necessarily be in a box of what it says in a job description. So I think that, tends to be challenging too, like sometimes for people who are coming from larger, more structured organizations, that can be challenging. And, even for me, I've kind of done a little bit of both. And I actually, I find, there's pros on both sides, between the two. So
What is coming next for Heartbeat that you're excited about? That we're going to get to see out there? What's coming up?
yeah, we have some work that we're doing with creators that I'm very, very excited about. I can't talk about everything right now, but there's films that we're working on, really focused on creators and sort of them at the forefront. So that's a big piece. I think we're developing a lot with comedians beyond Kevin, and that's a big focus for us right now is kind of the work that we're doing with the next generation of comedians and next generation of comedic creators. So I'm really excited for that. We just came off of WNBA All-Star. We did our inaugural Fever Fest with our partnership with Pacer Sports and Entertainment. So I'm really excited for what we have coming with them and growing that into a bigger moment and bringing people to Indianapolis and partnering with the Fever. And I think, obviously women's sports are having a huge moment, but I think we wanna make it more than a moment. We wanna make this, the future and, years from now, people look back and be like, "Oh, was there ever a moment when this wasn't a big thing?" So I think I'm really excited for the work that we're doing there. And then we're shooting a movie right now for Netflix, called 72 Hours, that it does feature Kevin, but also has quite a few up and coming talent. It includes Marcelo Hernandez from SNL. So I'm really excited for that. I think it's going to be hilarious, and there's a lot that people will enjoy there.
Just like you said, I mean, everywhere. Now we didn't even talk about sports. Now there's something
There's a lot happening. So yes.
something else. So I know we're out of time and we've gone over. Thank you so much for being with us, but we always love to ask what what are you watching or reading or listening to that you're loving right now that you can share with us?
Let's see. Um, I have to say, I got sucked in. I was somebody who was like, I'm not watching Love Island, and
Oh my god.
I can't
Everybody talks
I
about
can't believe
Everybody is talking
I
about this.
can't believe that
Like,
I am
the
going to admit
entire team
this.
is involved.
Yes,
Yes,
I can't believe I'm
yes.
going to admit this, but, yeah, my team was talking about it so much, and I was like, "Okay, I have to just find out what this is about," and then I was watching, and I was like, "This is ridiculous, like, why is anybody watching this?" I'm just gonna watch the next episode, though, just to see what happens. I mean, yes, I did some fast forwarding, but I did get sucked in, to that. I can't leave it on that, though, because that is embarrassing.
We had somebody last week that was like, "Thank God Love Island's over and I can get back to my life."
Yeah, I'm going on vacation next week, so I'm excited to read. That's like my time that I get to read. So I have a couple of scripts that I'm going to read, but a friend of mine gifted me this set of like Young Pueblo books, and I'm like very excited for that so
Oh,
I can,
nice.
get my mind in a good place to come back and, hit the ground running going into the end of third quarter and fourth quarter. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're easy and digestible in some
Yes.
ways. So, they're great.
Yeah.
Well, it
Um
was so nice meeting you. Thank you so much for being here. This was great. We love Heartbeat, and you guys are, like I said, always so generous with us and with your time. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. You're so generous to have all of us on and participating in your program. So, we love it and I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to In Her Words. We hope you'll join us at womeninentertainment.com and go to our Substack for extended interviews and behind the scenes access.